everyone, and welcome to season 3 of The Voice of Luxury. My name is Lucy Challenger, and I'm the CEO and founder of Polo and Tweed. And I am joined today by Andy Craig, who is a personal trainer and nutritionist. So, full disclaimer for everyone listening, I've known Andy for quite a while now. And Andy entered into my life and transformed my life and my body with his personal training magic. But I really wanted everyone to understand a little bit about Andy's amazing journey in his own life, his own career, and what magic he brings into people's life with fitness and food. So, Andy, maybe you could start by telling us a little bit about your background, your career, your path, and how you find yourself doing what you're doing now.
How back do you want to go? In terms of my current company position, the fitness industry, I suppose, I kind of fell into it. Not fell into it. I've always been involved in sport, but from a coaching perspective, it was really through I was in a sales job, maybe a little bit of a midlife crisis, and the recession hit. Some companies merged, and I was pushed out, and so my mind was in two minds what to do. I was still heavily involved in playing sport myself. And then I thought, what, let me go and just do this course. I went and did a PT course, which also included sports massage. And then I found one of the guys that I was on the course with introduced me to CrossFit. And I did it for about a month. And within that month, I knew that that was the path that I was going to take, because everything that I wanted to do, it was fun. I was doing those kind of things. It was a movement that was a little bit underground at the time. But also it was a really good global community that had a really easy access into the market. And I'd just come off of my coaching course. I was really new to the industry, although I'd known a lot of stuff from training over the years. Now I was going to coach people. So that was my kind of route into coaching within the fitness industry.
Mm. And so did you have a specific love of fitness yourself before you undertook the training to be a coach?
Yeah, look, I'm a typical ADHD kid, not very academic. At school, all I did was want to play sport, and I did every discipline of sport, every sport you can imagine I played. Didn't really want to be in a classroom. And when I left school, I kind of just worked construction. I bummed around, went raving for a couple of years. And then I ended up into a sales job. I was playing sport, and I was doing what I needed to do to support my family. And I never really had a massive pull to go to the fitness industry. I just loved playing sport.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
What
and
sports were
so
you playing?
when I left school, I was playing football,
Okay.
and then played some rugby league. I played Aussie rules for a while as well. And I was playing Aussie rules and rugby at the time when I started training to be a PT. So there was this natural progression that I became qualified, and I started working with my teams to help them. It was amateur, semi-pro was league, but I ended up just helping them and starting to craft my skills in and amongst that with the CrossFit stuff that I was doing as well. So people would say that it's always the thing that I was going to do. I'm not sure that's it. I just enjoyed playing sport. I'm physically active. I enjoy physicality and those kind of sports.
Mm.
And the CrossFit thing just had so much to it that I could do all the things that I loved doing, and then could also make a business of it, coaching other people to do those things if I wanted to.
And tell us a little bit about CrossFit, because I know it's become very popular now. There's a lot of people that train in it, but it's still in some aspects perhaps more of a closed or smaller community than traditional fitness classes. And I think a lot of people will have seen the documentaries on the CrossFit Games and these incredibly looking women, male athletes that are doing incredible things with their body that us mere mortals could never possibly imagine to do. So what is CrossFit for sort of the average person? What does that actually entail?
It's a question everyone tries to reel this off in a couple of lines, but CrossFit is just basically a mixture of body weight training, typical kind of aerobic work, weightlifting, powerlifting, resistance training, and it's amalgamated into a way that will test you in many different facets of fitness, whether it's strength, whether it's long time conditioning, and you get to just practice lots of different things. I still think CrossFit is an incredible training tool for the general public. I do. It has a bit of a bad rap recently over the last couple of years. Since I started, I got into it in 2007. It's always had a bad rap. You've always had people from outside of the community that have always looked down on it. a lot of the time that was people that were losing customers from their business to CrossFit gyms because this thing just exploded. And so they would mouth it without really knowing about it. But, admittedly, when you have an easier barrier to entry, you've got people that are coming off of an IT job, sitting in a chair like this for 10 years, that do a little bit of training, get their cert over the weekend, and then want to go open a gym. So there is a definite risk of some underperformance from coaches, 100%. But that's in any industry. You can become a PT now in 8 weeks, I think it is. You can do a course, and then you're in the market training people as well. So I still think it's an incredible training tool for the general public. I used it a bit for when I was playing rugby, just because it has so many different facets of fitness to it, and it had a carry over to the sports I was playing. But I suppose I got into it because there was this massive global community that I was then part of. And I wasn't speaking to all these people in America and that kind of stuff, but you would have some interaction with the guys on the forum back then. They used to have this online forum where everything was just free, and you had these really knowledgeable people that were just sharing information, open source. And it was a way to just do stuff. And I saw it at that time as a way of me to get into the industry and start a business, coaching people on this stuff. And that's what I went after.
Okay. And you're obviously very active and passionate about your craft. You have your social channels and you enjoy sharing information and inspiring people. But what is it about your job that makes you want to, sometimes work quite antisocial hours, early mornings, late evenings, on weekends? Like, what is it that excites you about your job and the way you train people, inspire people?
I think, without sounding too cheesy about it, it is about watching people and teaching people to do things that they didn't think possible. When I first started CrossFit, I had a lady that trained with me, Jules, my first ever client, and she now runs her own fitness business. She coached at the gym that we were at, right? She's an incredible human being. She's got an amazing reputation as a coach, and she's a fantastic woman. And so she was just throwing around sandbags and doing stuff that women at that point weren't typically doing. And I've said often, I don't really care about training athletes, right? Like, if you're top end of your game, like, I don't really want to be doing too much to make you 0.5% better. But it's watching, women and men, but just people that are running households or just general people that haven't typically done this kind of stuff before, or have dabbled with it and not really sure where to go. And then you guide them and you just watch them grow and be able to do things that they've never done before, wanted to do, or very near to doing. And that, for me, is really interesting. The working unsociable hours is rough, right? Like, we've had this conversation where I don't really want to coach in the evenings now because of the gyms that I was running. I worked early and finished late. And while I had lots of time with my kids and my family, working in the evenings now, I don't want to miss that time. So I've got to a point now where I can have that time with my kids, and I can say, I don't want to work in the evenings. Some people aren't in that position. Maybe I should do more work in the evenings, but I just don't want to. And so I kind of right now plan out when I want to work, and I kind of reverse engineer it. This is the time I want for me. And then I fill the time, usually early morning. So I've got the rest of the day to look after my family and do things with them,
Yeah. And you mentioned earlier, like, often now you have personal training qualifications that, you can do in a couple of weeks and then you're qualified. If someone was listening to this and thinking, I love fitness, or I'd really love to enter this as a career, what would be a starting point? Is there any guidance that you could give to someone who felt a calling to perhaps enter into the fitness world as a trainer?
Without sounding cynical, the first thing I would say to anyone that wants to get into the industry, usually people that get into the industry are people that are sporty themselves, right? You've either got people that are really athletic and sporty, and it's just a natural progression for them, or you've got people that have been overweight, unfit, fitness from a coach changed their lives, saved their lives, and now they want to get into the industry and do the same for other people. All I would say to people is, make sure that you're okay that your hobby becomes your source of income. Because as much as I love training and playing sports and being athletic and doing CrossFit and coaching other people in it was awesome. But when it becomes your business, you can sometimes lose the passion for the hobby that you had. There's been many times where I've looked at weights in my gym and thought, I just want to vomit. Like, I do not want to be in this room. I don't want to coach people. If someone talks to me about squats again, I'm going to lose my mind, right? But you kind of go through these phases, and that's a personal thing that maybe I was in my business a bit too much, as much as trying to run it, and there's a little bit of burnout. But in the industry, you have to do that. Like, sometimes when you're working in those unsociable hours, you've got a lot of PTs that are doing 8, 10 hours a day in the gym. That can start to encroach on your passion and your love for
Mm,
training yourself and the industry itself. So that's, without sounding cynical, that's the first thing I would get people to ask themselves.
mm,
And then I would just say, think about where you want to go with it. Like, it's cool getting a qualification, but you want to get the qualifications that are going to help you work with the people that you want to work with.
mm,
Right? That's the other thing. Like, who do you want to work with, and what do you want to do, and what do you want your business and day to look like?
mm.
Right? Like, plan that out first. What's your ideal day and week?
Yeah.
And I would say, okay, well, this is how I'm going to do that. I want to do this, this, and this. I either want to go low ticket, lots of people, or I want to go few people, high ticket.
Mm,
And people like both. People can manage communities, large communities, quite well. Some people are useless at that, but they're really good engaging with individual people. So I think that would be the other thing, is like, how do you want your day and your week to look
mm,
without burning out? And then reverse engineer it, and then go and get the qualifications to be able to do that. And I started like getting the minimal amount of qualifications that allow me to go and coach people,
mm,
get the information that I need, the qualifications and the experience to be able to go and coach someone safely and earn money without getting in the red. So
mm.
that was where I went with it with my business. But that's me. That's not
Yeah.
going to be everyone.
It's really interesting talking about reverse engineering it almost, and understanding that something that is a passion, if you then do it day in, day out, and it is your source of livelihood, can easily then shift into not being a passion anymore, and it becomes more mundane, or it becomes a necessity. So what keeps you motivated? How do you keep your motivation when thinking about doing a squat for the 50 millionth trillionth time is like the most annoying thing at that very moment? What motivates you to do what you do?
I have a family to look after. Like, this is what I do. I'm really good at my job.
Mm,
I am passionate about it. I love people like you, people like the lady that I shared today, people doing things that they haven't done before,
mhm,
pushing the boundaries, like, and having those kind of quite close interactions are the things that keep me engaged. Right?
mm,
Like, I've done a lot of stuff online. I have a lot of online clients, but I definitely still need that in-person connection.
mm.
I don't do computers like this all day long. My ADHD sends me into the bush.
Sure.
And so what drives me is providing whatever I can for my children, right?
Mm,
So they don't have to go without. And I know that sounds quite cheesy, but it is the driver for me. Everything I do is around that. And I have an outlet of my ability to coach people that
mm,
allows me to earn money doing that. You know,
mm.
it's something that I enjoy, that gives me the freedom to still spend time with them and be engaged in their life.
Yeah, no, fantastic. And that flexibility as well. I mean, yes, there is the double-edged sword of sometimes working antisocial hours, but then you have the flexibility that you're in control of your own path, and you can choose to take yourself into the experiences that you want. Can you, I mean, gyms to me are sometimes quite a bizarre and wacky place, and you have a lot of emotions and things being expressed, and people going through things in public gyms and private gyms.
Mm.
Can you think of any kind of unusual moments or weird or wacky stories in your kind of vast like times spent in gyms that you could share with us? Anything funny or really quite unusual that you
I've
remember?
I've got a few. Well, I've got a few. Well, I've got, so from a coaching perspective, I have to read the room, right? And I have to read people, and I have a way about me that is a little bit kind of forthright in how I like to coach,
Mhm.
especially with the CrossFit room. You don't always have time to be super polite and go around the room and ask to speak to everybody. And so I had these two sisters, the lady whose video I posted today, where, you know, she became a really good friend of ours. They're our best mates. And so she would come up and ask me, I don't think I can do this. I'm not sure I can squat that weight. And I would just say, shut up, go and lift it, and then come back and speak to me. And she would go off and she'd squat it, and she'd come back and she'd say, okay, cool, thank you. So her sister came up to me and I was like, shut up, go and squat, and then come back to me. And she just started burst out in tears. I was like, oh, uh, ugh, maybe not that one. Maybe not today. And so it's just one of those things. But again, I was at that point, I was early in South Africa.
Mm,
I was new into that town. The gym was new, and I was kind of finding my feet about how other South Africans were, because I know, my wife, a lot of my mates are South African. I know what they're like,
mm.
and so I was just testing the field and seeing what people are like. And sometimes you get that wrong, but it's a learning experience from a coaching perspective. But look, there's loads of stories, but that's one that always sticks with me. Always. You're like, oh, maybe need to wind it in a little bit.
Making women cry.
Yeah.
You tell them to squat. And you mentioned South Africa. So has a part of your career been abroad? Where have you been? Have you traveled much? Where has your work taken you?
Yeah, so my wife's South African. So it was almost a transition of me into the fitness industry out of sales. I'd been made redundant, and I managed to get another job with a supplier of ours. But around the same time, my eldest daughter moved to Poland with her mother. And I'd always said, if she's in this country, we'll never leave. Nothing will happen. We'll make sure that she's okay until she's 18, and then we'll make a call. And then her mum went off to Poland. And so I was getting quite disillusioned with the UK. Without going into too much detail, my childhood was quite rocky. My wife is completely different. So when I look at how I wanted my kids to grow up, without being a snob, I just didn't want them to grow up like me. I wanted them to grow up like her. So a lot of the South Africans I know, really respectful. You know what it's like in terms of discipline and how South Africans are. So I thought, you know what, for the sake of our kids, like I would like to go to Africa and have them grow up in an environment that is naturally a little bit more disciplined. And so we went off. We decided to go. I ran my business out the back of a car. So I was in a school gym, one of those old gyms that you wheel out and kind of hang on to do pull-ups, all the wooden beams. We did that for about 2 years out the back of my Audi. And then I got a van, and then we found a gym in town. We found this space. I didn't even know what I was doing. I still had my sales job. I was still working in a gym, and I was running CrossFit every night. I don't know what I was doing. But we'd found this space and it was ours. We went in there and everyone helped kit it out, and we put up rigs and everyone put in carpets, and it was just like that's part of the community. And then we decided to move to Africa. So in the February, Jen said to me, just go to Africa because you're doing my heading. All you're talking about is Africa, to go and see whether we can do it. And so I landed. There was one guy that was doing CrossFit on the beach who ended up being my first business partner when we landed. And I looked at it and I thought, oh, you know what? I think I'd already made my mind up. I said a 2-week holiday. So I was like, right, that's it. We're going. And we got back here. I got back here in the February. By August, we were gone. So we put everything into place. We landed. I said I'd have a month off. I think I lasted about 5 days. And then I found a venue. I ended up getting an old van from Jen's dad, from a guy that had passed away that was, it was just hanging around. So I drove that around. The windscreen came out when I was driving. And I threw all my kit in the back of that. We ran out of this little hall. And then we ended up getting one gym close to where I lived, up in Hillcrest. So that was about 300 square meters. I was traveling down every day with a kit in the back of my car, coming back up, coaching for the rest of the day. And then Reebok approached us about opening a gym in a big shopping center there. And we said, okay, cool. We were back and forth for about a year, and then that ended up going live. And then we had a number of coaches that were working with us, and then we partnered our business and 2 of the coaches with a third gym. So they went off and they had their gym that they were running because it was a big passion of theirs. And we were there for 7 years. I would still be there now if I could. The place is incredible. I think it's part of my soul, the way that it works. But it's a little bit dangerous with small kids, and the way that the country is going was a little bit scary for us. The bullets were getting a little bit close to home. Things were happening around the corner from us. And so we just said, right, that's it. And after we'd made the decision, we got out in 3 months.
Wow.
Sold one of the gyms, closed the other gym, sold the kit. And then we ended up getting bought out of the other gym that we had with the other coaches. So it wasn't great. I feel still now that we got run out by the things that were happening there. But, as a parent, you've got to do those things.
Yeah, no, of course you have to. And that seems very clear in how you speak about your family being, at the forefront of everything you do, and your passion, and why you work, and why you work as hard as you do. And when you're not working, are you doing lots of squats? I mean, like, what are you doing for fun?
Yeah, look, I train. I still really enjoy training. It's part of who I am. I train probably between 3 and 4 times, 3 or 5 times a week. That's a mixture of lifting some weights. I do a little bit of CrossFit still. Sometimes I'll just go and grab a sandbag and go over to the field and throw some stuff around. I do a little bit of jiu-jitsu. I was playing Aussie rules again for a little bit, but I've got a little bit of a niggle now, some tendonitis. So I can't play. And I'm still back to jits. I took a year off just with work and things I needed to do. But I got back a couple of weeks ago. I really enjoy that. Rolling around with other men in shorts. It's fantastic.
So And so outside of training, I mean, family time, and I mean, what makes you curious? Do you continue to learn about fitness and educate yourself with new trends or new
Yeah,
developments? Or do you feel quite sort of at peace with the knowledge you have now?
I think there's a contentment in the knowledge that you have, right? Like it depends how much stuff you've done. Like I've been exposed to quite a lot of training over the years, different kind of disciplines just because of the CrossFit environment. There's so much knowledge that's sent out into that community, and there's so much knowledge and information out there now. I've just started now doing a females coaching course, so just learning more about menstrual cycle and
Mhm.
everything that the ladies that I coach would have to deal with, just to try and make me a more knowledgeable coach. Because predominantly the people that I work with are
Mm,
women. So I just want to become a little bit more knowledgeable in that, rather than just about nutrition and just about training. It's going to delving deep into what things are happening at
mm,
certain times of ladies' life, so I am better equipped when they come to me, or if the things that they're doing aren't working for them, then I'll have a better understanding of where we can go with it. So I've signed up to that. There's still some courses that I do. The courses that I'll do now are very, not few and far between, but they're very specific.
mm,
Before I would just do the stuff that enabled me to coach everybody, right?
mm,
So I do this course, it enables me to coach people in this, this, and this, whether they're male, female, old or young. So now a lot of the stuff I do is a little bit more specific.
mm,
I'm also doing more business stuff. I've got a mentorship that I'm part of. It's trying to help me kind of learn how to grow my business online a little bit. I
mm.
started a business because I teach people deadlifts, right? And I can speak to people. And I grew my business because of that. So my business acumen has never been the strongest point. I have some pretty aggressive ADHD. And so I flip between lots of different things.
Mm.
That gets lots of things on the go.
Yeah.
Um, and so a lot of the stuff I'm trying to do at the moment is business related, so I can push that on and develop that better.
Yeah, I think one of the things that strikes me, particularly working with you and my life in kind of fitness from an amateur perspective is how when you work with a trainer, you put yourself in a vulnerable position. You're looking to them to guide you, you're looking them to inspire you, and you're going into sometimes quite uncomfortable physical, but also mental
Mm.
states. By being vulnerable, you are opening yourself to shifting and hopefully getting amazing rewards, but it's also can be quite scary. So is there anything that makes you feel uncomfortable or shocks you, and how do you personally dealing with the uncomfortableness that perhaps many clients feel when they first experience training or going to a personal trainer for the first time?
Right now, I wouldn't say there's anything that makes me nervous about coaching people.
Mm,
I think the first time someone walks in when they haven't met them before, there's always that initial, how are they going to be? How do I need to match and mirror how they are? Like, what's that going to look like?
mhm,
How do I need to be with them? And initially, you can usually know within the first half an hour how I'm going to coach that person. And sometimes it develops, right? They open up and there's a familiarity that you get with your coach. And
mm,
so those things will open up. But from a coaching, I've coached a lot of people and I've had a lot of different emotions come through that door. Initially, some people are quite scared, nervous. Some people come in quite abrasive. They've got it. And so I have to kind of match that a little bit.
mm,
My way of coaching, like I'm me. I don't try and scare people off. I'm not just me. And if you don't like it, you can bugger off. Like I'm me. I'll mirror and match you as much as I can, but sometimes there might not be that massive connection that we have.
mm,
And that means that it might not last very long. But you usually get that from the phone call that you have with them in the first place, or how you connect with them before you meet them.
mm,
And then from there, there's nothing that really scares me or panics me if people come in. I've learned that when I turn up or if they turn up, immediately, if you've been with them for a couple of weeks, you'll know whether they're on form or not.
Mm,
Like we've had these conversations, people walk through the door and I will change the session immediately in my
mm,
head. We are
mm.
not doing the things that I've got programmed because you're not in that emotional place to go there. And so it might be that we just kind of chat a little bit, do some stretching, do some stuff that you enjoy, and then we can get into maybe a tail end of that session where you're a little bit more relaxed
Mm,
or not. The fact that you got to the place where we are is the main thing,
yeah.
right? And sometimes people just want to get there and have a chat. They're not really too fussed about the crux of the ins and outs of
Mm,
everything that they're doing. They just need
mm.
someone to push them a little bit and be there for them.
And how do you manage people's expectation with results? Was that why you started looking into nutrition and understanding it in line with the training? If people have an expectation that they want to achieve something and perhaps aren't willing to do the work or don't have the knowledge about how they need to shift their nutrition, how do you manage people's expectations and in turn, what is it? How do you bring the nutritional side of things into it?
So the nutrition side is always part of the personal training. So you'll do an element of that in the training anyway. I did some extra courses after that, and it was always nutrition was always kind of a side piece within CrossFit. Like it was important, but people that do CrossFit tended to look after their nutrition. You could guide them and say, eat like this, eat these foods more often than those. And those people that are doing CrossFit, they're in, right? They're a dedicated crowd. They're in there most of the times. They're pushing themselves to places that most people won't go
Mm,
by choice, right? They're paying to come and do that. And so the nutritional side of it kind of took its own line. You could guide them. Okay, off you go. But the longer that I coached, there's only so many times you can coach deadlifts and pull-ups without it becoming quite mundane. And I was looking at how I could develop my business myself for the future, right? I still want to coach people. I still want to make people stronger. I still want to train people. But I found that nutrition aligned with that allowed me to make a bigger difference, right? Like I have a little bit of a thing where I'm a bit of a savior in my head of like, I want to save people from themselves a little bit, or I always want to protect people or guide people,
mm,
rightly or wrongly. And my ability at the moment with the nutrition and the training allows me to do that. And over time, people have got expectations. That's cool, and I will have an open conversation with them when they say to me, "I want this, this, and this," and I'll ask them what they've done in the past. Did they ever achieve that, and now they've backslid?
mm,
And how many times have they done that? Like your expectations are always way too big for the time frame that you want it to happen, and that's why you keep coming in and out, right? And so there's just a general conversation with that. I don't try and you know wrap it up too much. I'm not bolshy with it, but I would just say, in my personal opinion, I think we could go for this in the
mhm,
next 3 to 5, 6 weeks. Are you okay with do that? Because the way that I coach nutrition is not a typical calorie tracking, calorie counting, weighing everything that you eat. I'm trying to pull people away from that have been in that cycle for a long period of time.
mm,
So my nutrition lifestyle coaching, if you want to call it that, is very much a two-way street of me guiding them, giving them all the information and knowledge that I know that I've got over the years,
mm,
and for them saying, okay, this is the biggest thing that I need to work on in my head. And I'm
mm,
like, okay, cool, let's run with that. Did it work? Did the things that I gave you work this week? Yeah, they did, but this bit was really difficult. Cool, and we'll dive into that. Okay, this is what we're going to do now. Can you do that for me? Okay, cool. And then what you've got is then people making decisions for themselves rather than me just telling them what to do and them going off and mind-numbingly going through the things that they've been told to do and not learning anything.
mm.
So otherwise, people just end up paying another coach and another coach and another coach. And while it might not be great for my business that people are going to learn this stuff and then be able to go off sooner than they might have done before, I can sleep at night. But that's also what I want to do. Like I've done calorie counting, I've done pretty much every diet you can do because I wanted to see how it works and the results that you can get from it. And I believe there's a way that of doing things in terms of kind of principle-based nutrition. Do more of this, a little bit less of that, and take some responsibility about the things that happen in life.
Mm,
It's as simple as it can be, right?
mm,
But people have made this stuff very complicated. There's loads of different diets that pretty much do the same thing, right? And so I'm trying to educate people on how simple it can be
mm.
and give them some of the responsibility to go after it themselves, make some mistakes, and then I can say, cool, we're going to go there now. We're
Yeah.
going to go there now. Now, what do you want to do? Cool, let's go there.
Mm,
So that's the crux of my kind of nutrition lifestyle side of it. The training, I still think, is extremely important. I think nutrition without training or exercise or general activity is a one-way street to failure,
Mm,
because you can get a certain distance, but then there's only so much food you can reduce down,
sure.
right? Like if you've got some activity for heart health and just generally being more active,
Mm.
you don't have to be as aggressive with the nutrition.
Yeah, it's interesting what you're saying about the simplicity, because I think we live in such a saturated information times where, you only have to swipe onto TikTok or open your browser, and there's just so much information being thrown at us about how you should do something, like you say, like so many different diet books, or, the carnivore diet versus the Atkins, like all these different things. And people are constantly kind of being battered with this information of like, where do we go? How do we do? And yet, if they have these kind of quite clear expectations or goals, as you say, approaching it from quite a simplistic but effective route and giving the responsibility to them empowers them, rather than kind of, like you say, making them kind of buy into all these different subsets of kind of fads, and then it never becomes part of their life. So it's quite fascinating how you sort of approach it from that, um, giving people the autonomy to make the choices for themselves.
Well,
I also see, sorry, Karen.
no, I was going to say there's a lot of stuff within the fitness industry at the moment is about accountability.
Mm,
So accountability coaches, and I've spoken about accountability as a coach. You need to be accountable to someone, whether that's your partner, which you never really do much for anyway, because if your husband tells you to do something, you end up doing the opposite usually, right? That's typical marriages, right? And so they'll go to another coach that tells them what to do, and I'm accountable to
mm,
Johnny over there. Like every week, I need to do that. But that ends up being like Slimming World. You're like, okay, I'll go in there and pay my £5, and they'll tell me whether I've done well or not, and then they'll
mm,
set me off. But at some point, you need to be accountable to yourself.
mm,
So there's this kind of teeter-totter where I want to give them some autonomy to make some decisions, but not the wrong decisions. Because if they come back to me and say, I'm going to do this, I'll say, it's probably not the best choice. And we
mm,
learn from those interactions, right? And those conversations. But then at some point, they need to be accountable to themselves. So there's a lot around mindset, a lot around kind of terminology and psychology around food, how they see food, how they see themselves with food, emotional eating. So we
mm,
touch on that a lot. Those things are way deeper than just chicken and broccoli.
mm,
And so once they start to learn, I can navigate this event by doing this, this, and this. They don't ever have to worry about an event again without counting calories. They just go, cool, I'm going to make this decision. And then
mm.
tomorrow morning, I'm going to make that decision.
Yeah,
And that's it.
yeah.
So that's really where I'm trying to go with it in terms of autonomy and just easing them into being able to do this stuff without people like
Mm,
me.
mm. And that mindset is so vital. And I think for me personally, my experience and relationship with fitness and my body has always been that the less I do invest in my own fitness and training with you, with previous trainers in the past, my own mental well-being suffers and my mental health decreases, and I am more anxious and I am more tired, and all of these things, life stresses seem to build. Whereas when I train regularly, there becomes more of a balance in my own mindset, and also I feel like I can achieve more. I think many years ago, I went skiing, and the ski our friend took us up this very steep hill, and I'm sure I told you the story, but I will recount it now, that it was so steep, and I remember this kind of like walking up the mountain to get to the top to ski down, and halfway up the mountain I was having a proper moment of like, what am I doing with my life? This is ridiculous. I'm going to die, or I'm going to get stuck on this mountain and need to be helicoptered off. And I remembered hearing your voice, like, just do the next thing, 1 foot forward. Like, stop thinking like I've got 20 squats to do of this big weight or whatever. Just think now and the moment and the immediate next thing. And it was so comforting to have had that kind of instinctual voice of Andy in the back of my head, just saying, just focus on now. And I think that's a huge thing. You must see a massive difference for your clients when they struggle with perhaps mental health or anxiety or depression, and how exercise can affect that.
It's a weird one because I'm in the industry and because I've been involved in sport and I'm pretty much just an athletic person. That's what I enjoy doing, right? You're similar. You want to be strong. You want to be able to do certain things. You want to look a certain way, right? People don't like talking about this, but people want to look a certain way and they don't want to look another way, right? But there are some people that couldn't give two monkeys about exercise, about training. So while for me and you and people that are involved in training and sport, when we don't do exercise, we know how it negatively affects us, right?
Mm,
And how when we do it, it releases those endorphins and it makes us happier and we feel like we've accomplished something because we're doing the thing that we really enjoy. And sometimes I think people within the fitness industry can forget that those other people don't have that same buy-in.
mm,
But when they do start to train, they start to realize how it makes them feel. And when they start to see the changes, how that makes them feel. And then we have to be very careful about what they use as the anchor for them to carry on doing it, because if it's just aesthetics wise, that's always going to be a failure down the line. But once they start to do it, they may get a love for it. It might not be the same amount of love that you and I have for fitness, training, pushing our bodies. But if they're doing something rather than the things that they were doing before, which is nothing, then it's
mm,
going to benefit. So I think each person has their own individual love or hate with exercise. And it doesn't have to be training in the gym, right? Like you want to go walk up a mountain because you enjoy looking and going doing a painting when you get to the top. Great.
mm,
Like if you just walk into the top of that mountain is the thing you need to do to go and do the painting that you love, cool. That's your gig. Who am I to say that you need to go and lift weights, right? But if that means that you put another 10, 15 years on your life, great. Go and do lots of paintings and lots of hills,
mm,
you know?
yeah.
Um, so I'm very conscious of that, not trying to push people into fitness, right?
Mm,
You haven't got the love for it. If I just keep jamming it down your throat, you're going to push back even more, you
yeah.
know?
And at the moment, also in, I guess, our society, we see a lot more struggles. People are much more open with talking about their struggles. Obviously, we had COVID, and now we're having a global, form of recession, and times are getting really hard for people. How do you cope with personal struggles based on your experience, the experiences you've had, your fitness, your own journey with fitness? How do you approach dealing with challenges in life?
From a health and fitness perspective or from a
And from a personal perspective as well, like how do you your knowledge and your own, strength of mind when it comes to fitness and training others, how does that help you in our current plight and economic strain that we face us in society?
but this is going to get quite deep, and I speak openly about this, right? People don't like to talk about this stuff, but because of my childhood, right, and the things that I experienced, there are some self-esteem issues that I have in terms of how I see myself within the world and my ability to be educated enough to deal with mainstream people.
Mm,
The only thing that I ever really had for myself was my physical ability, right? I was in every top team of sport. I played every single sport, did every single discipline in athletics, and I was good at all of them, right? Without sounding big headed. But that's all I had. That's what I was known for.
mm,
And then when I trained and I played sport, I've got a decent amount of size on me and I've been able to hold it. And so there is a way that I do not want to look. And there is a way that I want to look with the knowledge that that's going to change over the years as I get older.
mm,
But in my head, as long as I'm doing the things to allow myself to stay in as good a shape as I can do and be as healthy as I can to be around as long as I can, then how I look is going to be a reflection of the work that I put in there.
mhm,
Because I definitely don't want to look like that or have to go through those health problems, because looking like that creates those health problems, right? And this is things that people don't want to admit. So
mm,
there is definitely a kind of self-esteem issue for me. If I don't have how I look, how I coach people, the things that I do within fitness, what do I have? Right. But again, that's work that I've had to do on myself. And I've done a lot of work, as you know, on how I see the world, how I
mm,
see myself in this world and what I can give to it. Being a father and a husband and looking after this family is a massive thing for me, as it is for everyone. Right. But again, because of my childhood, it has an extra emphasis for me. And so as I learn about myself more and I'm softer to myself, not being in the fitness industry or maybe not looking a certain way or being capable of doing certain things doesn't have as much emphasis because I'm still the protector of this family. I
mm,
still want to be strong enough and capable enough to do that if someone comes through the front door or comes at us, right? And so that is also something that I hold in myself. I want to be physically capable to be able to protect them when the world is becoming ever more volatile,
Yeah.
you know.
And you speak about, having some, challenging aspects in childhood and growing up. If you could give your younger 18-year-old self advice from now, what you know, what would be perhaps the one thing you would tell your 18-year-old self to think about or consider?
I think I would say look at what you have, not at what you don't.
Mm,
That's the biggest thing for me, right?
mm,
Like the resentment thing, within those circles, like if you think a certain way about yourself, you look at everything in a negative light,
mm,
you miss all the good that's going on. I
mm,
spent years thinking about how bad things were and why me was a big element. Like, why me this? Why didn't I have that? Why did I have to go through this?
mm,
But then I was missing the fact that, I still had two parents, still
mm.
had a roof over my head. At 18, I was still having a great time in a field with a load of ravers. Like it was a great time.
Yeah.
But I would just say that because I think I spent too many years before I did work on myself about looking at the negatives
Mm, mm.
rather than what I actually had,
Yeah. Yeah.
and my ability to be able to go and do stuff for myself.
Yeah. And always finding the balance. So I have a few more questions for you, but before I get onto them, I want to just enter a quick fire question round with you.
Okay.
So I'm going to ask you, well, I'm going to say two words, and you can pick the word that you're most drawn to. You don't need to give me an explanation.
Okay.
Don't think about it for too long. Just tell me the word that you're most drawn to out of the two. Okay?
Yeah.
Cats or dogs?
Dog.
Morning
So
or night?
morning.
Vacation or staycation?
Vacation.
Netflix or party?
Mm. Mm. Bye.
Pizza or burger?
Burger.
Rain or sun?
Sun.
Fast or slow?
Fast.
Sweet or savory?
Sweet.
Eggs or bacon?
Both. Eggs.
Okay.
Egg.
Tea or coffee?
Coffee.
Texting or calling?
Calling.
Today or tomorrow?
Today.
Nice, thank you. So a few more questions for you, Andy. We've spoken a lot about, we've spoken about mental health, we've spoken about your emphasis and your passion to look after your family and also find that balance with working life and motivation to continue and to learn. You talked about the course about women and their hormones and all of these things. Is there any spiritual practice you follow? Do you have any spirituality? And if you do, does that influence the way you approach your life and your career?
No.
No?
No, I grew up in a household with a Scottish Protestant father, a Catholic mother, and religion was thrown around as a derogatory term to put people down. And
Mm,
so I was never really involved in it. I
mhm,
sang at church or in the choir, but that's as far as I got into the church. And then I went to a church when I was in South Africa.
mm,
I don't have any personal spirituality. I'm a very just deal with what's happening. Like
mhm,
I try to be as good a person as I can be. I've done the things that I've done, and I am where I am because I've needed to do those things, right?
mm.
And yes, maybe someone was looking out for me a couple of times when I've, had a couple of moments when I might not be here. But then I also went through a lot of stuff when I was younger. So I was like, okay, well, if you're going to put me through that and then save me there, like maybe you shouldn't have put me through that
Mm.
when I was younger. And so that's not me being cynical. It's just I do what I do when I wake up and the things I need to do during the day to just get on with my life.
Yeah.
I've got things to do. I've got people to provide for. I just go about my day.
So what do you believe then it takes to succeed in life?
I think there was a naivety in my own ability initially.
Mm,
Um, I didn't really know what was needed within a business. I just knew that I could coach people and that I was athletic enough to go and do certain things. And I
mm,
went. We went to Africa with nothing.
mm,
And we opened a couple of gyms. So I think there was a naivety in my own ability, which is great. Over the years, imposter syndrome like everyone pops in and you're like, oh, okay, well, how did I get here? And how am I going to get there? But I just think resilience, and I just get on and do it.
Mm,
Is whether you've got all the knowledge and you're highly educated, or whether you're the best athlete, if you don't get up and just go and do the things that need to be done, nothing's going to happen. And that can look like whatever it's going to look like. You know,
mm,
being a business or doing anything you want to do hasn't got a specific look.
mm.
We're all individuals. So what works for one might work a little bit for someone else, but that's going to need to be tweaked. And
Yeah.
so just get on with it. A little bit of resilience, like acknowledge if you are struggling a little bit, have some decent support network and people that you can open up to a little bit. But then, I've had a moan, things are pretty rough, but if I don't do something about it, it's going to get even worse.
Mm.
You just get up and get on with it.
Yeah. Or like you told your friend, go and do the squat and then come and talk to me about it.
Yeah, it's exactly
And then
that.
you'll either have someone cry or
Yeah.
success. Either or, who knows? But
Crash and burn, baby. Crash and burn. You're going to work or it's not.
Oh, Andy, it's been such a pleasure talking to you today. So everyone who's tuned in and listened to this, if you want to come and speak with Andy, he's of course on social media. You can find him on his website, which is andycraigtraining.com. He's also on Instagram, of course, Andy Craig Training, and he's also on TikTok, and his handle there is Andy Craig Coaching. So if anything today has inspired you or resonated with you, if you want Andy's help for any form of transformation in your body and fitness life, or indeed you just want to have some advice or chat with Andy about anything, I speak from personal experience. Working with Andy has been truly transformational for my mind and my body, and I feel the best version of myself that I have ever been. So it's such a pleasure to work with someone that has that ability to adjust to each of his clients, as you've shared with us today. So thank you, Andy, for joining us today and sharing all this amazing information with us. It's been a pleasure.